The Riordanverse is a huge universe composed of so many books and stories. For such an extensive universe, Riordan, or the author, managed to leave a couple of questions unanswered. In this video, I thought it would be fun to go through 10 unanswered questions from the Riordanverse to shed some light on the forgotten plot details or mysteries that the books never directly answered themselves. Before getting into it though, spoilers will be inevitable, so you've been warned. And with that, let's get into it. Number 10. Where do Norse demigods go? This question is something that popped up for readers of the Magnus Chase trilogy because of an observation some fans had about Norse demigods. And let me explain. In the main three Kane Chronicles, or PJO, Heroes of Olympus, and the Trials of Apollo, we learn that demigods either go to Camp Haplet or Camp Jupiter. Camp Haplet is a home for Greek demigods, and Camp Jupiter is a home for Roman demigods, and demigods go to these places for proper protection and training. And interestingly, the same could be said for the Kane Chronicles. Although both Carter and Sadie aren't exactly demigods, and instead they're called magicians because they practice Egyptian mythology magic, they actually have a version of Camp Haplet and Camp Jupiter through the House of Life. The House of Life has different divisions or gnomes all around the world, and Carter and Sadie are from the 21st Gnome, which is located in Brooklyn, and that's why the place is also known as Brooklyn House. So, given all of this, we have Camp Haplet, Camp Jupiter, and Brooklyn House for Greek demigods, Roman demigods, and Egyptian magicians. But somehow, we don't have a specific place for Norse demigods, which makes Magnus' trilogy pretty unique. Instead of going to a camp, Magnus actually dies bravely in the beginning of his book, and from this, he is taken to Hotel Valhalla. Valhalla is a place for Inheri or fallen heroes, but if you think about it, almost anybody who died bravely could be an Inheri. Like, you don't have to be a demigod or someone supernatural to get into Valhalla. So we can't really call Valhalla as an equivalent to Camp Haplet, Camp Jupiter, and the House of Life. So with this, it begs the question of, where do Norse demigods go? And more importantly, do Norse gods even care enough about their kids to make a camp or some kind of place for them? But until now, there is still no clear answer from the books. Number 9. Where is Bianca's soul right now? Bianca D'Angelo is Nico D'Angelo's older sister, and we first met the D'Angelos in the third book of PJO, or The Titan's Curse. In that book, Bianca unfortunately passed away after trying to get a Mythomagic figurine for her brother, and her death greatly impacted Nico. For months, Nico couldn't handle the idea that his sister was gone forever, and he ran away from Camp Haplet in the hopes that he would find a way to bring her back. This all changed, however, in the next book, or The Battle of the Labyrinth, when Nico managed to talk to Bianca's ghost during a ritual. Bianca told Nico to stop trying to bring her back, because she's at peace with what she did, and this helped ease Nico's pain. Interestingly, from this point, we learned that Bianca had chosen rebirth because she wanted to go to the Isles of the Blessed. And to understand this, I'll discuss a little bit on how the underworld works in Percy Jackson lore. So basically, after a person dies, they can go to 3 places. First is Elysium, or the realm of heroes who died bravely in battle. Second is the Fields of Asphodel, or the place where ordinary souls go to because they weren't that good or evil in their lives. And third is Tartarus, or the place where the most evil and wicked souls go to. Among all of these, Bianca chose to go to Rebirth, and Rebirth is essentially the process of being born into a new body after death. And in the underworld, souls could do this after dipping themselves in the river Lethe to erase their memories of their previous life, and then being born again in the mortal world. According to Nico in The Son of Neptune, Bianca had chosen Rebirth because she wanted to go to the Isles of the Blessed of Elysium. The Isles of the Blessed is a place in Elysium reserved for souls who enter the underworld, and they are judged and returned to Elysium 3 times in a row after being reborn. So, given that, this place is pretty much the final haven for the most heroic and noble heroes. But most heroes don't actually try to get there because they feel comfortable already with Elysium. But it is said that great heroes like Achilles now resides in this place, so the appeal is still definitely there. So, with what we have right now, we know that Bianca decided to be reborn to try entering the Isles of the Blessed, but until now, it's unknown where her soul currently resides. Interestingly, a similar question could also be said for another character named Jason Grace. Number 8. Where is Jason Grace's soul today? Jason Grace is a character from the Heroes of Olympus, and he unfortunately passed away in the third book of the Trials of Apollo series, or The Burning Maze, after an intense fight against the god Emperor Caligula. From his death, many of the characters in the books theorized that Jason must have gone to the Fields of Elysium, because Jason was clearly a hero through and through in the books. However, in the Tower of Nero, or the final book of the Trials of Apollo series, Nico told Apollo that he didn't know where Jason is, but that as a son of Hades, he was able to sense that Jason was in a much better place. Nico even tried to ask Apollo if Apollo knew where Jason was, but Apollo admitted that even he didn't know about it, because Jason could have picked Rebirth or Elysium, but it's still left unconfirmed where he is today. Number 7. What will happen to Leo and Calypso's relationship? Leo Valdez and Calypso met in the House of Hades after Leo was thrown to Ogygia by the snow goddess Chione, and their relationship started out pretty rough. At first, they constantly argued, but little by little, they actually warmed up to each other and soon fell in love. Calypso even kissed Leo before he left her, and as Leo sailed away, he swore in the river Styx that he would come back to her, and he did so in the last book of the Heroes of Olympus, or the Blood of Olympus, after Gaia's defeat. The Blood of Olympus ended with Leo and Calypso sailing into the unknown on Festus, and it's a very romantic moment, but things were far from perfect moving forward. Months later in the Dark Prophecy, or the second book of the Trials of Apollo series, we learned that they were in constant stress while traveling, and this sparked a lot of arguments and problems between the two of them, to the point that Leo actually told Apollo that he sometimes wonders if Calypso regretted leaving her island for Leo. All of these issues soon led to a break in their relationship, as seen in the Tower of Nero. Leo reveals to Apollo that he and Calypso had taken a break from each other to sort things out on their own, and they even started doing different things away from each other. Leo was in the way station in Indianapolis teaching kids shop skills, while Calypso apparently joined a local high school to finally live a normal teenage life despite being more than 4,000 years old. So with all of this, it's clear that Leo and Calypso stopped dating, and their future seems pretty unclear. Number 6. When did the books take place? In my channel, I made 2 whole videos discussing the Riordanverse timeline, but one thing that never gets fully addressed is this question. To tackle this idea, most fans just go with the book's publication and assume that everything starts in 2005, because that's when The Lightning Thief, or the first ever Riordanverse book, was published. However, this became pretty complicated over the years, especially because one thing is clear. Percy's age is very inconsistent if we consider the fact that Percy just recently turned 18 by the Tower of Nero. In The Lightning Thief, Percy was 12, and if we go by the publishing timeline-wise, that was 2005, which is 21 years ago. So if you do the math, Percy must be roughly 33 years old today in 2026. So that begs the question of, when the heck does this series even take place? In order to address this concern, Rick once mentioned that there isn't exactly a specified time or era the Riordanverse takes place in, and it can happen in any time period. However, the books themselves have some pretty dated references or jokes, and here are just some of them. In the Wrath of the Triple Goddess book that came out in 2024, Rick wrote that Grover's teeth looked AI generated, which could only mean that this book somehow takes place recently during an era where AI is more prominent. Another example is Frank mentioning the Wakanda thing in the Tyrant's Tomb, which is a dated reference to the 2018 Black Panther movie. So this means that the events of this book is supposed to have happened after this movie so that Frank would make this reference. A similar thing could be said for a short Italian story made by Rick during the COVID-19 pandemic, wherein it's clear that this story takes place during COVID-19 as well. But at the same time, Percy mentions this exact story in the Wrath of the Triple Goddess. So that's just really weird, because when did the pandemic take place exactly? And honestly, it just goes on and on without any further explanation, so yeah. Pretty much the point is, we have no idea when do these books even take place. Like, we're just kind of vibing with Rick as he makes more and more books. Number 5. Who are Georgina's real parents? This question refers to an unresolved plot detail in the Dark Prophecy. Georgina is a mortal girl around 7 years old, and she never knew who her biological parents were. When she was a baby, she was seen by Agamethus, or the brother of Trophonius. Trophonius was a son of Apollo, and he was also known as the Dark Oracle, because of a bit of a long story that I'll summarize here. Basically, Trophonius and his brother worked for King Hyrieus, and one night, they attempted to steal treasure and riches from a cave. However, Trophonius accidentally set off a trap that made Agamethus crushed under a beam. Trophonius couldn't get Agamethus out, and seeing that the situation was hopeless, Agamethus decided to sacrifice himself to save Trophonius. Trophonius prayed to his father Apollo to save them, but Apollo didn't do anything, because he believed that Trophonius and Agamethus were rightfully punished after trying to steal treasure. Desperately, Agamethus told Trophonius to cut his head off, then run away, so that nobody would know their true identities. And with great reluctance, Trophonius did exactly what his brother said, which is why in the Trials of Apollo series, we see Agamethus headless like this. From this traumatizing moment, Trophonius ran away and got lost in a cave. From this cave somehow emerged a new oracle that declared pretty dark and disturbing prophecies, hence the title of this book. And Trophonius' cave would be the source of prophecies for the next centuries to come. However, Trophonius' oracle is very different from other oracles, and here's the process of getting a prophecy from him. First, you have to find the cave itself. Second, once you enter the place, you had to drink from both the Black Fountain of Memory and the Fountain of Forgetfulness. Third, you had to meet the spirit of Trophonius and receive intense nightmares and untold mental horrors to receive the prophecy. If you think that's it, well, it's not. After your suffering, you would be driven to insanity unless you manage to sit on the throne of memory. The person has to sit on this throne so that they could recite the prophecy, which is in the form of a sonnet. And that's it. You got your prophecy. All of this may seem like random lore right now, but it's actually heavily interconnected to what happened to Georgina, which is why I wanted to give you guys some context. But going back, from his death with his brother, Agamethus turned into a ghost, and he actually brought baby Georgina to a place known as the Way Station in Indianapolis, where Emmy and Joe live. Emmy and Joe are a couple, and they decided to raise Georgina as their adoptive daughter. 7 years after Georgina started her life with Emmy and Joe, Commodus, a god emperor from the evil organization known as Triumvirate Holdings, soon arrived to take over Indianapolis for himself. This posed a great threat to the place, and Commodus actually wanted to take creatures called griffins from the Way Station for his sick parties. To get answers on what to do about the situation, Georgina actually ran away from home to find the oracle of Trophonius. She did the entire process I mentioned earlier, but she wasn't able to get to the throne of memory because Commodus had stolen it, which is why Georgina was lost and insane for a while. However, at the latter part of the Dark Prophecy, Apollo and the rest managed to rescue Georgina, and she finally sat on the throne of memory. From this point, Georgina uttered Trophonius' message, but it wasn't a prophecy. It was a message for Apollo. Through Georgina's body, Trophonius told Apollo that he was glad that Apollo finally answered his prayer, referencing the night of Agamethus' death. And after this, Trophonius said something interesting. He said, "You sent this little sister of mine to do your errands?" while making Georgina tap herself on the chest. This line shook the entire room, because Trophonius was clearly implying that Georgina was Apollo's daughter, which would also make her Trophonius' sister, since he is Apollo's son. Trophonius told Apollo to go to his cave tomorrow morning, and the message ended there. From this moment, Leo, Calypso, Emmy, and Joe all questioned Apollo about what the heck just happened. Leo spoke up about the sister line that Trophonius mentioned, and Apollo genuinely admitted that he didn't know if Georgina was his child. Calypso continued with Leo's thought, and said that if Georgina was Apollo's daughter, it would also explain a lot of things. Or, in her words, it would explain a lot. Why Georgina felt so attuned to the oracle, why she was able to survive the experience. All of this led up to Apollo genuinely trying to remember, but he really couldn't, which is why until now, we don't know who Georgina's parents really are. Number 4. Why did Hyla and Reina split up? Hyla and Reina Ramirez-Arellano are sisters and daughters of the Roman goddess of war Bellona. They grew up together in Puerto Rico in the house of Julian Ramirez-Arellano, a war soldier from Iraq, and his experiences in war led to severe PTSD. Julian would sometimes go insane, and Hyla and Reina would often try to escape their dad. This all led up to an intense night wherein Julian got mad at them for trying to escape. Julian started to attack them, and at one point, Hyla got knocked out. In anger, Reina actually fought back against her dad, but this tragically led to his death. From this point, Reina and Hyla fled from Puerto Rico, and they somehow landed a job in Circe's spa and resort. This all changed, however, when the demigods Percy Jackson and Magnus Chase destroyed Circe's spa, and pirates under the leadership of Blackbeard took over the island. Reina and Hyla spent many years held captive by pirates, until they eventually escaped after fighting back. From this point, it can be deduced that Reina and Hyla were pretty close because they did everything together. But what's surprising is that they actually went on very different paths after escaping the pirates. Hyla went on to join the Amazons and eventually rose the ranks to be the leader of the Amazons by the son of Neptune. while Reina joined the Roman camp Camp Jupiter and eventually became a praetor or leader as well. Although Reina and Hyla found some kind of home away from each other, it's still unknown as to why they even separated in the first place, which is why the question remains today. Number 3. Where did Nico get his Stygian iron sword? This question was something I personally encountered when I T-ranked Riordanverse weapons, and realized that we barely know anything about Nico's Stygian iron sword. We first see the sword in the Battle of the Labyrinth, and we see Nico use it to fight monsters. But surprisingly, there's no explanation for how Nico got the sword in the first place. Even the Riordan Wiki stated that the origin of the sword is currently unknown. But what's interesting is that it also pointed out that Nico might have made the sword on his own. By the name itself, Stygian iron comes from the underworld and is cooled in the river Styx. And seeing that Nico is the son of Hades, or the god of the underworld, it could be possible that Nico made the sword himself, but it's still left unconfirmed. Number 2. Did Frederick Chase know about his siblings? The Chase family is a very interesting family in the Riordanverse, and I actually made a full video discussing each family member, so if you're interested, it's linked down below. In this family are 3 Chase adults: Randolph Chase, who is the oldest, Frederick, the middle child and the father of Annabeth Chase from PJO, and Natalie Chase, the youngest and the mother of Magnus Chase, who actually has his own trilogy. Randolph, Frederick, and Natalie had their fair share of experiences of the supernatural world, and after the events of the Trials of Apollo and the Magnus Chase trilogy, Frederick is the only Chase adult left, as Natalie died before the events of the Magnus Chase trilogy, and Randolph died after the events of the second Magnus Chase book, or the Hammer of Thor. With both his siblings dead, it begs the interesting question of this: did Frederick know the truth of his siblings' relationships with the Norse gods? I mean, Natalie literally fell in love with the Norse god Frey and had a son through Magnus, while Randolph made a deal with the Norse god Loki to bring his family back from the dead, and died trying to do this. What's interesting is that in the Magnus Chase trilogy, it's pretty clear that Frederick is aware of his siblings' deaths, but it's unknown if he actually knew the full truth. And speaking of the Chase family, this brings us to number 1. What did the Chase family argue about at Thanksgiving? This must be the most puzzling moment in the Riordanverse, and let's talk about it. In Magnus Chase's first book, or The Sword of Summer, Magnus tells a heartbreaking event that broke the Chase family apart, and it happened like this. It was Thanksgiving in the Chase family home, and Magnus and Annabeth were hanging out in Randolph's library. Things seemed fine in Magnus and Annabeth's eyes, but the opposite was happening downstairs, as Randolph, Natalie, and Frederick were fighting. The fight was so intense that Frederick went to the library and told Annabeth that they were leaving. From this point, the 3 siblings split up and didn't talk to each other for the next 11 years. Both Magnus and Annabeth didn't know what the fight was about, but what we do have is just a slight hint Magnus gave in The Sword of Summer. There, Magnus said that his mother told him to never go to Randolph's house, and even told him specifically that she would never give what Randolph wanted. This hints that the conflict must have concerned Randolph and Natalie specifically, but that also begs the question of how Frederick was somehow involved. In my personal interpretation, here's what I think happened. I think Natalie had a falling out with Randolph, and this argument must have been related to the Sword of Summer, or a powerful weapon that once belonged to the Norse god Frey, who coincidentally is Natalie's lover and Magnus's father. Randolph was known to be obsessed with the Sword of Summer because he wanted to prove that the Norse gods were real to his colleagues in Harvard, and because Natalie literally met and fell in love with Frey, Randolph might have wanted to take this as an opportunity to find the sword. Natalie must have gotten upset with Randolph, and that's why Natalie specifically told Magnus that she would never give what Randolph wanted, aka the sword. On how Frederick was somehow involved, I think Frederick tried to be the middleman between Natalie and Randolph, but somehow, things got too out of hand, and Natalie and Randolph might have said some things that greatly hurt Frederick, which is why he never spoke to them in the next years. But at the same time, I think Frederick felt guilty for not being able to contain the fight, which is why somehow he agreed to take Randolph's call to find Magnus and the Sword of Summer. I mean, if Frederick truly hated Randolph and Natalie after the fight, then why would he agree to go to Boston and do this errand for Randolph? Plus, I think Natalie was the only one who had resentment for her brothers, because throughout the Sword of Summer, Randolph wanted to make amends with Magnus and Frederick, while Frederick cared enough to go and see the 2 of them. Also, Natalie's words to Magnus are very telling about what she feels, because Magnus remembered her saying, "We're staying away from your uncles, especially Randolph. I won't give him what he wants. Ever. You have to trust me, Magnus. Being around them, it's too dangerous." Now, all of this is just my personal theory, but even with it, the fight that the Chase siblings had in Thanksgiving remains to be the most mysterious event in the Riordanverse in my opinion. And those are all the 10 unanswered questions in the Riordanverse books today. So how about you? Do you have any more unresolved questions about the Riordanverse? Let me know in the comments down below.